What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my very first Halloween tutorial, Halloween makeup tutorial in my channel for the year 2019. I am so excited. Last year was such a blast creating. I think I did two Halloween makeup tutorials that year. This year I think I'm gonna do 4. I am trying my hardest to record as much as possible, but of course I still want to make these looks look super good and as best as possible, so I'm putting all of my effort in them. This video in itself took about 3 hours to record, so editing all of that down took a while, so I'm gonna try and make it as short as possible, but still give you a detailed tutorial as to how I created this look that I have going on right now. Of course, it's a pumpkin inspired jack-o'-lantern is sort of a thing that I did on my face. So without further ado, and before I make this intro any longer, if you're interested to see how I created this pumpkin look for Halloween, then please stay on and keep on watching. Alright guys, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, and for this part I already moisturized and primed my skin off of camera, and I am going in right away with my eyebrow pencil. I am using the NYX Cosmetics micro brow pencil to score a diagonal line going from, you're seeing, from left to bottom right, and just drawing a diagonal line to where the separation between the pumpkin side of my face and my natural, not natural look, but the skin side of my face is going to be. And then after that, for the normal or the glam side of my face, that's what we're gonna call it, I went in with foundation. You can use any foundation that you used, but I went in with my most full coverage one, which as usual is my Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place makeup. And I did add a little bit of my L'Oreal Infallible 24-hour fresh wear foundation, which you guys know I love. And then after that, I went in with a little bit of concealer. You guys know I always use my Tarte Shape Tape concealer. Spread that out a little bit with a brush and then blended it in with my sponge. And before we move any further, I forgot to say at the beginning, please like this video and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd love to have a view. Just thought I'd put my little plug there. And then once the concealer was nice and blended out, I went in with powder. And then after powder, we followed that up with my NYX Professional Makeup Highlight and Contour Pro palette and just did my contour as usual on the hollows of my cheeks and then to the top of my forehead. And then for blush, I did want to use a blush that was kind of on those orange tones, so I went in with my Alamar Cosmetics Colorette Blush Trio, and I used a combination of Seclusion and Isla. They're very beautiful, like corally tones. The shade Seclusion kind of doesn't really show up too much on my skin, but it does give me like a hint of like coral on my cheeks, which I really love. And then for highlights, because I did really want something super blinding, I went in with the Morphe X James Charles palette and I used the shade Face. It is actually a beautiful highlight and I really love it. And then after that, I went and did my brow instead of my brows. And we're just doing one of them in this case. And again, I'm going with that same brush that I used at the beginning. Just doing eyebrows as usual, and then we're gonna move on to the eyeshadow. And the first shade that I used for my eyeshadow was the Morphe X Jaclyn Hill palette, and I went in with that kind of like mustardy shade on the palette, that yellowy one, and I used it all over the crease using a super fluffy brush. And I even dragged that same color to my lower lash line. I'm kind of gonna speed through this whole process because I know you guys are gonna be more excited about the pumpkin part. And then after that, I went in with a different brush just to deepen things out in that crease. And I actually went back with the James Charles palette and I went in with the shade Code James. And I also dragged that shade to my lower lash line. And then after that, for the very center of my lid, I went back in with the Jaclyn Hill palette, and I went in with a dark brown shade. It's kind of like a warmer chocolatey shade of brown. It's right on top of that brown shade, and I added it all over my lid. Or doing a smoky eye for this side, and just make sure to really go back in and blend those edges nice and smoothly. And then I used that same shade on my lower lash line using a penciled brush, because you don't want that dark brown to be too far down the lower lash line, so you want to keep it nice and tight and close to the lower lash line. And then after that, I went in with that same pencil brush and I went into the black matte shade and kind of used it as an eyeliner and really smoked it out on my lower lash line, and I added a little bit to my lids as well. And now for my waterline, I am using the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On Eye Pencil in black, of course. I added some mascara to my lower lashes and to my top lashes as well. I am using the Tarte Cosmetics Big Ego Mascara. I added some falsies, and for my lashes I am using the Velour lashes in the style CEO. And with those lashes in place, the glam side of my face was finished, and we are going to be moving on to our pumpkin. Now, because I didn't have any cream products that I could use, kind of like those cream face makeup that's used for like special effects and stuff, I didn't have an orange shade, so I figured, hey, I have a color corrector that I never use anymore, so I'm gonna use that for my pumpkin today. So I just scribbled it all over that side of the face and used a dense brush to really blend it into that side of my cheek, and it worked really well actually. And then once the color corrector was nice and in place, I went in with some powder and just powdered that entire side of the face. It's just gonna make it so that the shadows that you put on top of it are gonna blend nicer, and it's also gonna make it so that your eyeshadows are not just gonna sweat everywhere. And then for the lifesaver of the day, I had never owned a black liquid lipstick. I do own a black lipstick, but I hate it because it moves and it bleeds on my lips, and I just don't like it. So when I saw this at Walmart, I was like, yes, this is gonna be so perfect for this look, and you're gonna see why. This is the Milani Amore Matte Lip Creme in the shade Leather. So what we're gonna do with this bad boy is now take the doe foot applicator and use a tiny brush like this one that would normally be used for like gel eyeliners. I'm gonna use it with this one and start scoring the triangle for one of the eyes, and that's all gonna be colored in with this same liquid lipstick. So just take your time, and as you guys can see, I went around my eyebrows. That way in the end they're not gonna show up in the look, and they're gonna be nice and covered, and they're just gonna blend in into that hole in your eye. So I went in around my eyebrows, and then I even used to make the process of filling in that hole with black faster, I used the doe foot applicator and the liquid lipstick and just filled everything in. And then on top of that entire thing, once you filled it all out, I went in with a brush and took some black eyeshadow and added it on top of that. Again, when you use powders on top of your creams, it's just gonna make it so that it stays put and it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't bleed and doesn't do anything. It'll just stay nice and put, and it'll also take away that shiny look to the liquid lipstick. And then of course, because you want to get really close to the eyes, I went in with my eyeliner and I added it to the top of my lash line, and then to my bottom lash line, and then to my waterline as well. You want to make that eye as black as possible. That way it's just not going to disturb the look. And then we're gonna move on to the nose. Same thing, we're gonna take that tiny brush and then use that liquid lipstick to draw the shape of the nose, just a little. It's kind of like the shape of a flame. That's what it reminds me of. And then you're gonna draw it on the tip of your nose and then fill it in with that same liquid lipstick. I forgot to add some powder on top of that, my bad. And then for the lips, I'm gonna use that liquid lipstick and add it to my lips. Do my lips as usual. Careful not to go outside the lines. And then once the lips are done, you're gonna take that brush and then just extend the outer corners of the lips outward. And then you just wanna make sure that the outside of the lips just kind of like smoothly connects into that line. And you wanna make it as though the starting point of that line to the very edge, it just kind of like dissipates and it just goes from like thicker to thinner on the very outer corner. And then as you can see, I did kind of a mistake a little on that bottom lip. I think I bumped the brush into my lip. So I figured, hey, that's gonna be one of my first lines going downward. So starting with that, we're gonna take that black and just drag it downward and then drag it upwards. It's almost as if you were drawing lips on a skull, but I figured it would just look really cool if I did that, and it would kind of like mimic the divots in the pumpkin. And just add a couple, just keep doing that all across the lip area, kind of like the same distance from each other. They don't have to be the same height, and just scatter them like that. And then the bottom part of those lines, you are going to want to like spread them out a little bit, make them a little bit thicker. That way it just doesn't look like lines going top to bottom and then sideways. You want to add some dimension to those. And then once you have those lines nice and buffed out, we're going to add a little bit of orange. And I went in with a James Charles palette and I used the shade 518. And what I did is took a flat dense brush and added some lines. So I went in kind of like in between those areas right there, in between the vertical lines that we just did, and added another color. I just wanted a different shade of orange. I really wanted to add some dimension to this pumpkin, so it's not just one solid color. And this orange is kind of bright, so it'll add something a little bit different to it. And then after that, I'm gonna repeat the same process of making those lines on my eye. That way they kind of connect, but they didn't really connect. Just kind of like mimic the lines that we did on the lip area to the eye. So they kind of go with each other, but they don't connect all the way. And then of course, don't forget about that side of the face. You're gonna do some black lines there as well. And then on the top of the eye as well, again, it all connects to the bottom area. Whatever you do on top, you do on the bottom. And then taking another brush, you're just gonna buff out that black color. For this, I used some black eyeshadow, and just make sure the ends of those lines are nice and buffed out and that they're not too thin. You want to buff them out a little bit because of course it's gonna make it have a little bit more dimension and add a little bit more shadow to those lines. Repeat that same process through all of them. And then right next to those lines, I added the shade 10% off from the James Charles palette because it is a different color. It's still dark, but it goes kind of like one shade down from that black. So it's gonna add again more shadow to those lines. So I added right next to those black lines. And then with that same shade, I went with a pencil brush and I added it all along that diagonal line that we drew in the very beginning. And you just go all along it, and as you can see, it adds a shadow to that line. It kind of looks like raised already. And then for this part, I'm gonna go a shade above the color corrector, and I am using the shade Code James for this, the very center shade from the James Charles palette, right next to that previous one. Again, you're kind of like diffusing those dark lines, those black lines, to the color corrector color. You're making a nice gradient in between those two, adding shadow and just dimension to that pumpkin. And I forgot to add some lines right next to my nose, so I did that. Spent a little bit more time diffusing those black lines. And then it took me a little bit to figure out the perfect highlight shade for this, and it turns out it was right there on the James palette once again, and it is the shade Tune. This palette has honestly been such a lifesaver. I feel like I can do any look in the book and it'll somehow go back to a color from this palette. I really like it and I'm really glad I purchased it because it just allows me to do so many looks with it. I have everything I need in one palette. It's amazing. So I added that shade Tune to kind of like the corners of those areas, and it's just adding another dimension of highlight to my pumpkin, which I was really excited about. Again, it took me a while to like figure out what shade was going to work with it. I tried yellows, I tried whites, but nope, turns out it was this one all along. Alright, so with that, the pumpkin side of my face was done, and I was gonna move forward with the very middle part of my face and creating that kind of like skin that's tearing open. And what I'm doing is taking some of my Nye Liquid Latex and adding it all along that diagonal line that I did at the very beginning. And then once you apply a small section, you're going to work in small sections, and once you apply the liquid latex, after that you're going to add some toilet paper on top of that. It's literally toilet paper. And then on top of that toilet paper, you're going to grab a brush and just add more of that liquid latex right on top. And then the trick or the key for this is to make sure that you really make those edges nice and smooth. And wait for that to dry, and in the meantime, while that dries, you're going to go to the bottom section of your face and repeat that same process, adding liquid latex, adding toilet paper on top of that, and then adding more liquid latex on top to seal the deal. And you can repeat this process until you have a thick layer of what's going to become a double skin, and you're going to want to finish with a layer of liquid latex on top. You don't want the toilet paper to be your last layer. And then once your layers are done, you're going to wait for that to dry. And while I waited for that to dry, I realized I forgot to add my second eyelash. So I did that in the meantime. And I also forgot to add some inner corner highlight, so of course I needed to go back and do that. So some just finishing touches to my glam side. I added a little bit to the very top of my highlight too. And then once the toilet paper was dry, I went in with some powder and I added some powder on top of that just to make sure everything was nice and dry. And then on top of that, I went in with some foundation, the same foundation that we used at the very beginning. We're gonna add it on top of the toilet paper to make it our skin color and to make sure it blends nice and smoothly into our skin. Even blend it in a little bit with our sponge, just blend it seamlessly into your skin. And of course, you wanna go back with your bronzer brush and make sure that that contour is nice and there again. And now, being super careful, please promise me you'll be super careful if you're doing this. You're gonna take a pair of tiny scissors and then you're just gonna cut one of the edges of your skin, and this is the part that's gonna look lifted. So you're gonna lift one side of that toilet paper and you're literally just gonna cut right there and lift it up with your fingers all the way down. And then underneath that second layer of skin, we're gonna add those same shades that we used for the pumpkin first, and then I went in a little bit darker using the shade 10% off all along that line. And then on the very edge of that skin, I added a mixture of the shade Spooky, a shade No Bean, a touch of the shade 10% off, and I just went in with all of those different shades and I added it with a dense brush to the very edge of that second layer of skin. That way it kind of looks like it's bruised because of course you just tore your skin open, so of course you want to add some irritation, some grossness things going on, kind of like if it's like dried up blood, just some soreness, some bruises, and those shades are perfect for that. And actually the best shade for this was, I found out it was the one in the Jaclyn Hill palette, and it was that kind of like a burgundy shade on there. It works perfect for this. It really gives your skin kind of like a very sore look. And with that, the makeup was done, and I followed up with a bald cap. I added a black wig. I got this one at Party City, so it's not like the best quality of wig, but it did the job. And with our wig in place, this was the final look, you guys. That was the entire thing done. My very first Halloween makeup look in my channel. I really hope you like it. I really like how it came out. Again, I put so much work into it. This was my second try at doing something like this. Pumpkins are, I realize they're very hard to do. I really hope you like it. If you did, again, don't forget to give this video a big old thumbs up and subscribe to my channel before you leave, because more looks like this one are coming up, and I have very exciting things planned for you guys. If you want to see a list of all of the products that I used, they will be in that description box below. If you have any questions or any suggestions for future videos, that comment section is yours. It's open to you guys. Of course, I would want to hear your suggestions. Let me know in that comment section. I'll be more than happy to help you out in the best way that I can. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Take care. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and hopefully I will see you right here on my next video. Stay tuned. Bye guys.